All right, Kyle, did you play a little bit of hot and cold when you were a kid?
Little bit.
Okay, so if hot is winning an NBA title and cold is the NBA lottery, I want to go through a couple teams as NBA free agency kind of marches on. Some teams that are more or less set. We know what their roster is going to look like. The Dallas Mavericks.
Yeah, I guess the Mavericks are a little bit colder, although I do like that they picked up Seth Curry. Like that was one of their problems last year, was trying to figure out the floor spacing. But I mean, yeah, ultimately their team is Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic and not a whole lot else. I mean, I know they picked up two bigs in the draft this last year, Olivier Maxwell Prosper from France, and I believe it was Jaden Maxey, I think his name is, and that'll help them obviously by getting longer and adding shooting with Seth Curry, but those are kind of periphery moves at this point. Dallas will be better next year than they were this last year, but at the same time, I guess colder than, say, Dallas is on their way to winning the championship or even getting back to the Western Conference Finals like they did in 2022.
Golden State Warriors.
Golden State, I don't know what to do with them because I don't believe there's anything they can do to win a championship. But at the same time, they have Steph Curry, so that usually is a bump for your team in the going to be better category. But I don't think Golden State really got a whole lot better or worse coming out of this draft. They got a couple of young players who probably won't play minutes given how their roster lines up. And then Chris Paul replaces Jordan Poole as the sixth man, which will make their floor spacing a little bit better. And there's talks about Chris Paul is going to be like the personal coach for Moody and Kuminga, which, we'll see how that ends up going with that unit as the second unit. But I mean, they got better by upgrading from Jordan Poole to Chris Paul. I just don't think that it's enough to really make them better than the sixth seed they were last year.
Boston Celtics, hotter or colder?
It's hard to get hotter than the best team in the NBA, which is what the Boston Celtics were last season. But I talked about this when the trade first went down, which is that, first of all, Boston's best chance of winning is to keep Tatum and Brown together and then figure that thing out from there, because they were the best team in the regular season last year in the NBA. They were 2 games away from winning the finals the year before. On paper, I hear you're upgrading from Marcus Smart to Kristaps Porzingis, and I think, yeah, that is on paper an upgrade. Porzingis is a better player. And then I think of the practical application, and I'm like, how are they going to put that together? I don't think Porzingis is going to be as valuable as he might be, given that he's now the third option on the Boston Celtics. The way they put their offense together, he's going to be touching the ball less, and if you touch the ball less, you are often less valuable, just as a name of the game. You can't make as much of an impact if you aren't as involved the way Porzingis was in Washington and New York. Less so in Dallas, but let's focus on the Washington and New York periods of Porzingis's career. So the good news for Boston is they didn't have to overpay to get him. All they basically had to do was flip Marcus Smart in exchange for Porzingis. And by the way, I think they got a draft pick in exchange as well from the Memphis Grizzlies. So, I guess at the end of the day, they didn't overpay for it. So I guess everything's going to be okay there for Boston. They just dumped some salaries of Gallinari and Muscala to make it work. So yeah, I think Boston is going to continue to be a top 3 team in the NBA. No move that they made them worse at the end of the day.
Okay, and the last one I'm going to hot and cold test you on is Phoenix Suns.
Phoenix Suns. I made the joke when the trade first went down for Phoenix that they went from getting bounced in 6 games in the second round to the Nuggets to getting bounced in 5 games in the second round to the Nuggets. Yes, Bradley Beal is a better player than anything they had prior. And also, it doesn't make them better than Denver, and also doesn't address the fact that they're probably going to have some injuries in the regular season. But Phoenix is the second best team in the Western Conference, and I think that's worth something. Also, they filled out their bench quite nicely. I know everyone was like, who are they going to have to play after the big 5? And they actually did fill out their bench kind of nicely. They got Chimezie Metu from the Sacramento Kings. They brought back Josh Okogie. They brought back Damon Lee. I do think they have a solid enough bench around those guys. So Phoenix is the second best team in the West, which I guess is worth something. So I'll go hot.
So Frank Vogel versus Monty Williams, how do you think that's going to go down? Obviously, bringing in more of a defensive coach. We know the problems that Monty Williams is having with some of the personnel there in Phoenix. Phoenix, out of those teams I mentioned, is probably the most interesting because you add in a mega deal like Bradley Beal, and we've been talking Bradley Beal getting traded for what feels like a decade at this point. So to see it finally happen, what basically stole all the headlines for at least a week before we got into the real free agency talk that we're talking about, well, today. I think some of the things that people are saying, and this is more casual take you'll see on NBA. It's not an untrue take. There is obviously only one basketball, and you have a bunch of guys who are scorers between KD, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal. Who do you think is the most ground between that trio?
The Phoenix Suns go as far as Devin Booker takes them. That has been the case for ever since Durant got traded. Beal is obviously the clear number 3, which I don't think means like, oh, Beal's going to take a step back. There were times where last year he was the number 2 behind Porzingis on the Washington Wizards. So I think that the Phoenix Suns go as far as Devin Booker takes them. And that's kind of crazy to think about, right? Like, after Kevin Durant's one of the 10 to 15 greatest players in the history of the NBA. And at this stage of his career, the Phoenix Suns go as far as Devin Booker takes them, which, by the way, isn't the worst bet in the world, because the Phoenix Suns, they were 2 games away from winning the championship with Devin Booker as their best player 2 years ago, when they had that Chris Paul, Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, Jay Crowder, DeAndre Ayton team that won the Western Conference. So it's not a bad bet to say we go as far as Devin Booker takes you, because he just might be one of the 5-6 best players in the NBA. Also, yeah, no reason they should have fired Monty Williams. That's just whatever. They got Frank Vogel. Fine, whatever. He's like Jason Kidd on that Brooklyn Nets team.
I guess Ray Aiden's happy at least, right? He's still with this team, by the way, too. That's another weird nuance here. I was expecting him fully get dealt after the Bradley Beal deal happened, but here we are. He's still there. Let's revisit the Boston Celtics a little bit, because I tell you, man, this had my heart. This one had me torn. If the Celtics ever pulled down banner 8 or 18, I wanted to be with that group, that trio, Marcus Tatum, Jaylen Brown, because these are home guys. These are guys that we've been part of this core for years. Yes, they've teased us, they've tantalized us, but at the same time, like, they stole our hearts for years, especially Marcus with the hustle plays. But still, it's the same effect of the Warriors and Draymond Green. That's what we had with Marcus Smart, and he's gone now. And I do think Kristaps is a good trade. I think that was a good move by Brad Stevens. He saw the value. Like you mentioned, picks back. You just traded away Gallinari, a player who didn't even get to step on the court for you because of that ACL injury last year. And you managed to turn that into Kristaps, who turned into your number 3 scorer on this team. Or, well, I guess if you kind of factor in where Malcolm Brogdon's kind of said, also an awkward situation, given that he was traded for a minute and then he wasn't. But Malcolm Brogdon with this team. As far as the Jays go, sure, I agree with that. It is completely valid when you talk about this team and what's going to happen there, because you look at the Miami series. Well, Jaylen having one of the worst game 7s in the history of game 7s is where you start. If Jaylen Brown just has his normal 20+ point stat line, doesn't shoot Muli from 3, then the Boston Celtics are probably in the NBA Finals. How that goes with Denver, well, currently that's the Vegas favorites going on for next year's finals, Boston versus Nuggets. Maybe puts you in a better position. And if that is the case, you probably want some more versatile bit like a Porzingis on your team when you are talking about going against that dude out there, Nikola Jokic, coming off his NBA championship. You want some more flexibility, and especially when you have an aging Al Horford, Rob Williams, whose injury history is long as the day is, I don't know, whatever saying. But either way, my point is having at least that trio, I think, works. And you already had some talented guards between Brogdon, White, now Peyton Pritchard, who wants to trade this offseason. I guess he gets more minutes. We'll see how Joe Mazzulla won in. I think they're increment closer. You look at the East, I still think they're the best team. Philly's going to take a step back. We know with the Harden stuff. I don't think Patrick Beverley is going to go for them exactly. And then the Bucks, I mean, it's a health concern. And I don't even know what to do with this Miami team. That's still TBD, as we still wait on a Lillard trade.